it's lovely to be here, and I love digital painting. And I actually teach this subject in my day job at Lake Washington Institute of Technology. Again, my name is Oscar Baechler. I've been doing open source graphics stuff for 16 or 17 years. I just like showing how cool it can be to everyone in the community. And after Blender, Krita is probably my #1 go-to of like software that I use all the time for digital stuff. And digital painting in particular. You can get Krita at krita.org. Why Krita? Just, to go back in history a while, I think one of the stories that really stuck with me is the lead developer at HoloRems at one point was talking about developing for Krita and philosophies behind it, and where they had a little bit of contention with the GIMP community and the GIMP devs, and apparently as a contributor to GIMP at one of the GIMP fests down in South America, somebody in the audience asked when is GIMP getting CMYK support, and the GIMP devs said, our users don't need that. That sort of is the philosophy of how not to do it. And I love seeing some of these programs like Blender and Krita actually have a lot of success, partially due to a really robust feedback loop of talking to users, incorporating their feedback, and actually trying to make something that works for artists. And so it's questionable, but one of the first things out of the bat that Krita did is they adopted some normal Libre Franca policies from Photoshop, and it just meant that if you were in that ecosystem, it was very easy to jump over. And you guys are all open source nerds, so who cares about Photoshop? But this is really kind of important, having going out there and talking to the other side of things. But so I've been doing Blender and Krita stuff for a long, long time. We were talking earlier about how is it pronounced, and it's pronounced Krita. And I know this because I hung out at the booth with the lead developers for a long time. You got it?
I do, but I don't have the pen.
All right, never mind.
Does somebody have?
That'll be fine. We'll just paint with a mouse.
Sorry.
There we go.
Nah, they're usually not compatible across devices.
What is
You
it?
can try this one.
Just
So this one's a Surface.
Yeah, we already tried that. We're fine.
Okay.
Nah. Okay. Yeah, we'll paint with a mouse. It'll be fine. I paint with my finger on my phone. I can do it. So this is Krita. You can get Krita at krita.org, and there's lots of cool stuff here. You can go to the downloads, the features. Some of the things I love doing is there's various Krita brushes out there that you can go install. But today I want to just cover some of the basics of the interface and get you used to how you can use this. And some of my favorite tricks for just doing some digital painting real fast, actually. And I might even sneak in a little art history and art lessons here.
Yeah.
Yeah? Good
Definitely.
stuff? You guys like that?
I do.
On what platforms is it available?
Krita is available on a lot of platforms. Windows, Linux, Mac. I think it's on Android as well. I don't know if it's on
Not
Apple.
on Mac in terms of the iPad.
Yeah.
It's
I
not
think
on
that's
Mac
more
in
of,
terms of the iPad.
yeah, it's not on iPad.
Right.
Looks like. What's this?
It says how to use.
Mirror.
Yeah, it's basically used as a device mirror. Oh well.
Samsung, I think.
I think that's more Apple's fault than Krita's fault.
You don't think.
You can install Krita through Steam or the Android store. And this is actually really nice and helpful because you can set it up as a purchase. And although Krita is free and open source, doing it as a purchase is really good for them. In fact, I think a lot of their revenue comes from the Android build. So as always with open source things, be a helper. Go over here and donate. You really get by as a group. But let's talk about Krita. When you get here, you have an interface that starts off kind of similar to other graphics programs. A big list of tools over here. Up here, when you're on any given tool, you have this tool settings bar. You have your standard file, edit, blah, blah, blah. Over here you have what Krita calls Dockers. And so you can go to Window, Dockers, and there's a whole bunch of extra ones. But for the most part, we're going to be sticking with these. The tool options, the layers, the colors. And you can see you can click and drag these. swatches. I like having my brushes real big, and you can click up here in the corner, and some of these are things you can go to as like basic setups, like big paint. So this is the standard I like, which is just color selection, layers, and brushes. And yeah, let's see what happens. So I'm going to start by turning on the mirror symmetry here. And I remember for years using this in Krita, and I'd always tell my Photoshop students, Photoshop can't do this. And Photoshop finally added it in like 2021. But this is just a really fun way to work. If you right-click in Krita, you'll see this brush puck. And this gives you all of your standard favorite tools. You can design these, you can choose what you want. And I think this is like, right out of the bat, what I love about Krita is it's designed for painting. It's designed for illustration. And they throw at you right away the things that you need. Your favorite brushes, your colors. As I use colors, it's actually going to generate swatches of my most recent colors. So if I'm like, now I got that one, I have a little green over here. And you'll note that this is populating with swatches as I go.
Which button did you do the mirrors?
It's up here on the top, which is horizontal mirror.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So you can make a vertical mirror as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which would be really nice if you were trying to do, say, a lake at sunset or something.
Oh, yeah. So one of the things I oftentimes do, if you wanted to start getting a brush set up, over here there's this little tag button, and this is where you can set up which preset you're on. So like, let's create a new preset, and I'm gonna start throwing brushes in here whenever it's my favorites. So I'm gonna click on, what do I want? Here. You can also search here. So let's search for my favorites. Shapes fill. This one is shapes fill, and I'm going to assign it to a new tag by right-clicking on it and typing in LFNW. So that's one of my favorite Linux Fest Northwest brushes. And now when I right-click, I can click on this tag, and I'll switch it to LFNW. And as I add more brushes, that's going to keep showing up. What other brush do I like? These are the RGBA brushes, and I can filter. These already exist on a tab. But I love these RGBA brushes. This is, again, one of those things where I brag up about Krita. In particular, like, I like addressing where it can do things that Photoshop can't. Under the hood, what's happening here is normally you use a... What did I do something?
No, the superscripts aren't working. This is
Oh, no.
This is my thing.
So normally in... oh, no. Where'd it go? In a brush, you have this bitmap stamp, and it determines how the ink comes out of your digital brush. And that's like a black and white image, and that's about as far as Photoshop goes. In Krita, you can store this as a PNG, which means you have black, white, and an alpha channel. And therefore, you can have the alpha channel represent your opacity, and the black and white represent the value of your brush. And so these RGBA brushes are real awesome because they let you have like two colors at the same time.
Like a pen with two nibs.
Yeah, it's like a loaded brush in real life.
Yeah, I used to paint, and I'm just thinking, this is what happens when you walk into your studio, or in my case, class, and set up. You pull out the brushes you're going to use, you pull out paints you're going to use, you pull out your palette, you
Yeah.
pull out whatever you're working on, and that's what you're doing, set it all up.
I love this because once you get used to it, you can be like, I'm going to go to this direction, and it'll give me a dark stroke. And it'll go to this direction, and it'll give me a light stroke. And I could just paint all day with this one thing. Well, it's a face. It's always a face.
Because you can load a brush on one side, and the other side have it sort of dry. So it's just exactly what you're doing.
Other hotkey things worth noting in Krita. A lot of this, again, is coming from some amount of Photoshop, Libre Franca. And so spacebar brings up the hand tool, and this is how you orbit around. You can use middle mouse wheel to zoom in and out. Also from Photoshop, pressing D on the keyboard will set your colors back to black and white. You'll note up here, way up here, you can see your foreground and background color, which are two presets that you can switch between using X, just like in Photoshop. So D set this back to black and white, and X lets me use it like this. Shift backspace fills with the background color. Control backspace with the foreground color. Again, just other conventions that you'll find in other software as well. So, I don't know, depending on how much digital painting. I mean, adoption is one thing, but like if you're learning this brand new, you can just know that this is the Krita way. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about Photoshop anymore. Other hotkeys where I just love Krita for being a brush or an artist-centric tool. Let's actually add another couple of these to my presets. I'm going to add this RGBA rock brush to my Linux Fest presets. And I'll go to all brushes. Another one that I really like is somewhere in here. These are the blending brushes, and I love Krita's blending brushes. They're just like work exactly how I want a blending brush to work. I'm going to add that here. So I'm going to select this, and some other hotkeys that are really nice in Krita are L and K, which will increase and decrease your brightness. So as I hit L and K, it's kind of like light and dark. I can just automatically make this pure black or pure light. Now, if I had pen pressure sensitivity, this would look a lot cooler, but I don't. So, Travis, here. Let's see if this broken Wacom tablet does literally any pressure. It maps wrong, but doesn't have. So wrong. Yeah, it's totally broke.
We can see it moving around.
So normally what I like about these blending brushes, if you do have a tablet, is if you push hard, it will use the active foreground color, so whatever color you have selected. And if you push soft, it will use the color that you start your brush on top of. So you can just use a light touch here and be like, I want to blend some of this black in. Or if you have white selected, you can use a hard touch and put like a hard dot of white right there. Other things to note is like I and O, increase and decrease your opacity.
Very neat. I wonder where that was, because I'm very used to the numbers being the opacity in Photoshop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the L and K hotkeys in particular. I'll just go back and forth with whatever I need. A little bit of white. Also, you can control color pick. So if you have the brush selected and you hit control, you can kind of color pick here. Let me quickly get this. What other brushes do I like? One of the ones I think is really cool. Again, like, what can it do that Photoshop can't? Let's hit F5 and bring this up. Krita has a series of brush engines that each do something kind of unique. And so in Photoshop, they make a specific tool whenever they need like a new brush engine. And they have like 5 tools ever. And I kind of love that in Krita, they have like 20 brush engines. Because whenever they need a new sort of feature set, they just design it up here. So here you can see the different engines, and they all work a little different. The brush menu here, when you hit F5 to bring this up, has a couple of things. First off, you have your brush selector, but then over here you have this little testing zone. What brush is this?
While you're doing that,
Yeah.
I used to hang out in their community, and you know, some communities, if somebody complains about something, they're sort of brushed off. In
Uh-huh.
Krita, if they're a person who's actually painting, an artist, they're like, would you like to learn how to make your own brush?
Mhm.
And somebody takes them aside and teaches them how to make their own brush or brush engine. And it, I mean, to me, this is what free and open source software should work like.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
why there's so
Brush off
many.
versus brush on.
Go do something before you complain, right? Get what you paid for.
Didn't mean to make a pun, but
It's the best kind.
This one I love, the curve engine. I'm gonna use this sketchy leaky one. I'm gonna increase my brush size. Is it the curve brush or is it the? Yeah, it's the curve brush. So if I increase like my brush size here, this brush is like really fun because oh, there we go.
Is there a hotkey for size?
Yeah, you can use the bracket keys to go up and down. I should actually select a brush with a brush stamp. You can also use, I think it's like shift left click to change your brush on the fly.
but not plus and minus.
No, but you can use the brackets to go up and down as well, which is Photoshoppy. Here we are. These are the ones. Yeah, the sketching chrome and the sketch leaky. So this sketch leaky brush is based on an old HTML5 experiment by a guy named Mr. Doob. Let it backspace to clear this. And what I love about this is as my brush gets bigger, you'll see that it's like drawing a relationship from the start of my stroke to the end of the stroke based on proximity. And so what this means is if I lower my opacity, you get these really, really beautiful, soft fill-ins where the closer I get to the same form, it's like drawing these relations between those lines. And so I think of this, you know, in 3D terms, I feel this is ambient occlusion.
And what is the name of that brush?
This is the Sketch Chrome. And a lot of times, like, this is one that I'll actually, like, make my own preset based on. I like having the brush size, the line width low, like 2. I don't know why this always doesn't. Yeah, see how nice and soft that is? So I'll save that as a new brush. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to clear this. I can actually like draw something here as an example of what it looks like.
It was looking very much like an anatomical view of a bird wing or something.
Yeah. So now when I save a preset, you notice that I drew in this little box here. I can use that as my thumbnail for this new preset. Load Scratchpad thumbnail. Hey, sure. I'll call this Oscar's Soft Sketch. And now that's a new preset where I can right click and add it to my favorites. LFNW. Oh yeah. So a lot of the time, my favorite way, I love just having this mirror mode on because it kind of gives you these like Rorschach instant successes where you can kind of see what you're looking at. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll use like, I love using just the Sketch Chrome for like really fast, aggressive stuff. And if you just draw this as a straight line, you can see it's almost like a crosshatch. But you can also block in that ink really fast. And it always ends up being a face. And I'll just hit X to switch between black and white as I work. And the older I get, the more destructive I am in my art philosophy. I don't believe in line art anymore. I don't believe in undo. I don't believe in erasing. What I tend to do these days is, as I work with something like this, I'll then just switch to this, and I'll be like, all right, well now it's kind of ready to blend this way or that way. So this is how I tend to work these days, is some combination of aggressive, hard, black and white. If I need like just a little pepper crumb here, I'll be like, pepper crumb is a paint measurement of, you just put a little bit of whatever value or color you're looking for, and then you go like this. And when I need a little black, so now when I like buff that out, it's fine. Another thing I love is using blend mode painting. Who knows about blend modes? Any blend mode enjoyers here? A blend mode is something where you can set it on a brush or a layer, and it creates a relationship between the top layer and the lower layer, or in the case of a brush, your current brush stroke and what you're painting on top of. So a lot of these are just mathematical. Multiply is probably the easiest example. If black and white goes from 0 to 1, and you multiply something by 1, it's basically not going to do anything, right? So that's like painting with multiply.
Is this like painting in real, real space? Wet on wet?
Yeah, it's kind of like using markers or watercolor. Like I actually use Krita with multiply on to like emulate markers, because markers and watercolor are subtractive mediums, right? Every time you put watercolor down, it's a little darker than the layer before. So you start, like in the physical real world, you start with soft, light washes, lots of water, very tiny amount of paint. I think the measurement mnemonic for this is water, tea, coffee, milk, cream, butter. And that's the thickness of your paint when you're putting it on. So you start with water, you then go to coffee or cream. Or you can be like Oscar and you go straight to butter. Black. But yeah, like the older I get, the more I'm like, I don't care about this color. I'll just put something down and it'll be fine. Blend, blend, blend.
I actually read a story this last week. This girl came to her mother with a painting, and she said, she was so proud of it. She said it was a self-portrait. She said, but it's just white. She said, I know, because I painted it over. I painted everything I wanted to put in there, and then I painted it over. She was just thrilled with her painting.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to make a thing to present to the world.
I mean,
Just express yourself.
I always go back to like my favorite day in life as far as an artistic journey was, the first, I was in second grade when I first learned about recycling, or was at an institution that was starting to do it, which was my elementary school. And so they said, well, we're putting paper in this bin now, and you guys, if you want to do art projects or draw, you could just go over there and get something out of the trash. And so that was a huge FERPA violation, because I was like drawing on the back of other people's math tests. But it was the happiest day of my life, because I could draw as much as I want. And I was painting on garbage. It was garbage. And I still go back to that all the time, like, I'm not a fiend.
What are you blending there?
So this is like, I'm just going back and forth with this like hard brush. And by the way, note that my brush, this was the thing I was going to show. My brush is set to multiply. When I'm set to multiply and I use black, it does stuff. If I switch to white, it does nothing. And that's because it's multiplying by 1. Whereas when I use black, it's multiplying by 0, and therefore it goes to 0. So, yeah, I love using this as something where like you can also set this to overlay and start getting a little weird with your colors. You can also use a low opacity with this. So sometimes if I want to do this as like, I don't know, a slow process, let's set this back to multiply. I can set this to multiply and sort of go slow by having my opacity low. So now every time I put down a stroke, it's going to be slightly more multiplied than the version before. I'm going to just get some aberrational colors in here. People are so nervous about color. I think another thing that's nice is this is another hotkey from Photoshop that carries over, which is Alt-Shift plus and minus. Goes through all of the blend modes. By the way, they have a ton more blend modes than Photoshop. Stupid Photoshop. My day job actually involves teaching a lot of Photoshop. I'm teaching 2 runs of Photoshop. And what's fascinating to me is like how two-factor authentication is ruining Photoshop. I have to do two-factor authentication like 5 times a day at my job. And it's just like such a pain. I hate Photoshop.
What do you say in class about that?
Oh, I tell them to use Krita. I love doing, one thing I love is my teaching approach is I do a lot of Libre Franca teaching. Like, I'll show you how to do it in the, industry standard software, and then I immediately show you how to do it better and faster and with more joy in the open source version.
Wow.
And, I'm not teaching you Photoshop, I'm just teaching you it at the same time.
Preach it.
So if I want a little more black. You can also hold Alt-Shift, and this is how I actually teach this hotkey. Hold Alt-Shift, and then just play piano on your keyboard. And all those blend modes that you see up there changing, those are basically just changing on the fly, because they all have some sort of letter associated with them, and Alt-Shift. So Alt-Shift-A is linear burn. Alt-Shift-M is one that I use a lot, multiply. Alt-Shift-N for normal. Alt-Shift-S for screen. Screen is going to lighten stuff. Alt-Shift-O for overlay. Even Alt-Shift, I don't know, what are the other one? Oh, color dodge, that's the other one. Color dodge, you guys like color dodge? Everybody loves color dodge. Color dodge is going to make things get more saturated as they lighten. So I should set this to like multiply first. I need this to be dark.
So dodging photography is when you're
Yeah.
darkening something.
That's what he's doing.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, right now I'm multiplying, but I'm going to dodge. I need something dark so that I can show it.
Can you burn too?
Yeah. It's funny because, like, whippersnappers these days, like, they have no idea, like, how many of these, like, graphics software conventions come from older methods. Like, what was it? Dodge and burn being, like, from darkroom photography is, like, one example, but I would also say, like,
With glass negatives.
who here has ever used an airbrush?
I have very little. I'm terrible at it.
It's like from a bygone era. Nobody has them anymore.
Really?
No, model painters.
Yeah, oh yeah. Those Warhammer guys.
Yes, all the Warhammer guys have airbrushes.
Yeah.
Yes, they are brushes because they're minis.
Go down to the railroad yard. There's a lot of airbrushes down there.
Oh, yeah, I think we'll find it. Airbrushes are everywhere. I changed my mind.
It's become
We'll look for you
niche.
down painting railroad
So that's
cars.
what we're teaching you.
Well, we don't teach it in art class anymore because it's messy.
Yeah. We have one in my college, and like I'm the only person who ever gets it out, and then I always immediately regret it. And if you use it only like once a year, you like get it out and you totally forgot how it works, and everything is broken, and all the other teachers get mad at you for using it. It smells. What else is cool in Krita? There's a lot of cool stuff in Krita. Let me show you an example project. I'll save this to my sketchbook, guys. Northwest, northwest, symmetrical faith. I'm going to create a new document. One thing that Krita has is clone layers. So I'm going to create a layer here, and I'll just put the stroke down. And you can create a clone layer and move it over here. Where's the move tool? I should show perspective. And now I go back to this one, and I keep painting, and it paints over there. Do you know how fucking angry it is that you can't do this in Photoshop? In Photoshop, this is called a smart object, which you don't actually get to edit live. You have to go inside of it and do the edit, and then it cascades down.
Oh my goodness.
And it's just pathetic. Yeah. Krita needs nodes, though. That's the one thing we need. Everything should be nodes. Layers are dead. Anyways, like to show you an example of this in use, this is like a little. There we go. Let's see if it can work over the network.
What was that option? How did you get that going again? You started with the layers.
Oh, the duplicate layer?
Yeah.
Clone layer? I'm going to create a layer here.
Okay.
I'll put something down. And then I'm going to create a clone layer,
Oh my.
which means that if I move it down, it's going to be identical. So I can paint on this one, and it paints on that one.
Okay. I missed that.
One of my favorite little puzzles that I do every day is what's the difference between these two little cartoons? And I imagine that that's the sort of thing that that person does. They clone
Uh-huh.
their little drawing and then make them slightly different.
Let's see if this will load. Blastoise, are you here?
I know, nobody reads a newspaper anymore, but I do.
Blastoise. I think this is it. So this is something I set up using clone layers to create teaching documents, and I want, so much of your ability to learn art is like if you see step 1 and then step 2 and step 3, and it all goes together, then it makes a little more sense. Come on, Krita, you can do it. So this is something where I set up a series of clone layers where the first layer has 5 clones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the second layer has 4 clones, and then the third layer has 3 clones until finally you get to this final one. And so the benefit of this is like I was able to sort of do this one time. This is for a project in my concept art class called Material Cubes, where you get to focus like specifically on render detail by making everything into cubes. Everything is cubes. And so what's cool is like on this one, I'd have to like find where this layer is. So here's step 1 clones. Here's step 1. So if I do something like, let's do a little mom here. This is going to clone down there, which means that when I go to step 2, I'm basically doing this blocking on top of it. But you can see like, also like as I put this down, like a lot of this is not coming through on the previous layers, because by the time I get to like step 3 and step 4, I'm increasingly doing more and more stuff on top of it, and you can't even see the bottom layers. And so this is what's known as a grisaille process, which is a fancy painting word for do it in monochrome first. And so I start with this line art. I try to abandon line art as quickly as possible when I make art because I don't believe in it. I'm anti-line art. I do a quick value block-in, and then as quickly as possible, I start blending and modifying those value block-ins to try and get this guy on top.
So you hate pencil drawing?
Yeah, I'm kind of anti-pencil. I think my favorite art supply is whatever I find lying around. Actually, there's pencil. Okay, pencils are fine.
Here's an orange. Let's see it in action.
Yeah, my least favorite art supply is erasers. I don't believe them. Just make another drawing. Quit erasing. And then you get to this. So like in the grisaille process, this next layer, you'll note that this is set to a blend mode on the layer, which is set to color. And so as a result, I can slap anything down I want, and it won't modify the value, it'll only modify the color. A little bit of jargon. Value in art means lightness or darkness.
And you have that layer set so that it's only value.
Yeah, and so like I think like if I go to my, this is step 4, I think, is set to color. And so it's just taking this black and white data and replacing it with whatever colors I put down. So like if I put down like dark blue here, it'll replace that. But if I put down black, it doesn't transfer any of that value. It's just using the color. And so I just like having layers where you can separate these out. Because as a first pass, it's really easy to colorize blasters, right? It's kind of yellow on his tummy. It's kind of blue there. It's kind of warmish red on his shell. And you just put those little details in. Step 5 is an overlay layer, where overlay is good because it'll simultaneously lighten lights with light and darken darks with darks. And so you can use it as sort of an expressive way to paint with blend modes. And it's just doing maybe a couple changes here. So you can see I'm trying to get a little more warmth in here. I'm also using this to add in rogue colors. One of the flaws of a grisaille process is you end up not, things are not just like this color picker blue when you put stuff in. Like, there's modes of green and pink and yellow in your skin tones, your flesh tones. When light is bouncing off of something, it's reflecting up. So if you're wearing a colorful shirt, you're going to have that color reflected into your skin. And all over the place, there's colors. And I think that's where on this overlay layer, I love just being a little bit sloppy. And I'll just be like, I don't know, let's try. Oh, this is another thing I love about Krita. It's got an awesome line tool.
Even though you don't believe in lines.
Yeah. I believe in straight lines, but maybe I don't. I just don't believe in line art. The reason I don't believe in line art seems like such a heretical thing for an artist to say. I mean, it's fine. It's just like in painting, if you ever do what's known as an alla prima painting, that's the fancy art word for do it all in one sitting. One thing you'll notice if you try and do an alla prima painting is you get out your pencil and you think, I'm going to do my line art. And then a half hour goes by and you're finally at the point where you have your line art. And now it's time to paint and you've just lost a half hour of setup time. And the first thing you do is cover up that line art and you can't see it anymore. So just start with painting. Go right in. Other Krita things I really want to show though. I think Krita has the best perspective tools I've ever worked with as far as a 2D illustration program goes. Let's see. If you go over here, this is the assistant tool. Really fast before I do that, I had mentioned using the line tool over here, and what I love about Krita's line tool, this is another one of those in-your-face Photoshop things. Photoshop can't do this. I hate Photoshop's ability to draw lines. But I can draw the line tool here, and it'll actually use the brush stamp. So it's like an active brush tool right out of the bat. I love this so much. There's nothing like that in Photoshop. In Photoshop, you have to control click from point to point. Welcome to the Krita Talk, where we just bash Photoshop. I'm going to go to the assistant tool here, and this is how I'm going to end up setting up a perspective grid. And you'll want to be in the tool options to see what these tools are. And these are the different assistants you can use. So that we have vanishing points. If I put 3 vanishing points here, I have 3-point perspective, kind of. Or I could just have 1 vanishing point, and it's 1-point perspective. How can we use these tools? Oops. I'm going to switch back to the brush tool, and under my tool options, there's going to be a couple of things. You'll note snap to assistants down here. And if I click that, it's going to make it so that at all times, my brush is actually going towards perspective. So I'm actually going to get a better, let's use just a standard pen or something. What's this? Yeah, this works. I'll right click and assign it to LFNW. And now I can just automatically have these perspective lines going in. I'm going to use View, Show Assistant Previews off, and View, Show Painting Assistants off. And now it's I don't even see it. One thing I recommend to my students a lot is, when they're doing perspective work, a lot of times the first thing that they do is they're like, well, I drew 3 lines. That's enough perspective for me to figure it out, right? And then they're surprised when they can't figure it out. So what I oftentimes do to start is just draw lines everywhere. How many time?
Oh, you got plenty of time.
Make a
You
cube.
don't stop till 11.
Oh, boy.
Or try to draw a cube, but I imagine that if it snaps to
You
How
got
to do what?
a cube.
Oh, yeah. You can do cubes. So I would oftentimes start with something like this. Then I would lower that layer's opacity, and then I can draw the rest of it. But let's actually do another assistant preview. I'm going to turn those back on. Edit, view, show painting assistants, view, show assistant previews. These are actually things that I have set to hotkeys in Krita, because I like using them so much. There's some other cool ones in the assistants, though. One is 2-point perspective. So if I hold shift, it'll lock this. And now I instantly got a nice little 2-point perspective grid. Other things you can do with this are I can lower the magnetism of this. I'm going to turn off snap to single line. You're going to be kind of amazed at how well you can do a pretty fast perspective drawing.
Looking like a map. We're looking like coming in for a landing.
So I love this because I can be like kind of sloppy with it, and it'll still work. I think sloppiness is actually like my artistic style. I love just putting lines down and saying, yeah, it's fine. That's enough. If you want to know some Krita artists worth watching, one would be Ramon Miranda. This guy puts out a lot of great brushes as well.
Do some of the people work on YouTube?
Yeah. Ramon Miranda. Look at that guy. Such a handsome boy. So he has lots and lots of Krita talks.
Amazing brushes.
Yeah, I love this guy's brushes.
Yeah.
Skip. So he's done a lot of stuff to like try and like replicate stuff from real world materials that just feel really good when you use them. All right, one more assistant, and then we'll move on. Oops, here we go. Assistant tool. Let's get rid of that. There's a fisheye lens that you can use, which is kind of awesome. And I'll make it so, yeah. Just have automatic fisheye lens. I can't believe how much I've been doing with a mouse. This is the most mouse painting I've done in years. Nobody's got a tablet I can borrow?
We tried.
Oh. It's my own fault. This is deja vu, by the way. It's not the first time I've forgotten a tablet while coming to Linux Fest to show Krita. Another guy that's really cool is hold on. I'm trying to remember his name. He's on YouTube. I think he's some artist.
Well, people do so many kinds of art. That's what I like.
Philip Ehrlich.
There's people who do cartoons, but just saying cartoons doesn't even cover it.
Uh-huh.
So like 100 different kinds of cartoons.
This guy is awesome. I love this guy. He does a lot of Krita stuff and just paints very representationally realistic, sort of Albert Bierstadt landscapes. And he does these as like 5-hour tutorials. So I love just having these on as like background noise on my television. And I walk through and, hey, suddenly there's this beautiful landscape. But he can just noodle on a single cloud forever.
Is it a happy little cloud?
Yeah. But he's great. Philip Ehrlich. Highly recommend. And I think the other one that tends to be around a lot is David Ravoy. David Ravoy is like the first guy I actually ever saw Krita from. And he also puts out a lot of brushes.
Pepper and carrot.
Yeah.
I think he's the first one I ever knew too. Might have known him.
Academy.
Yeah.
Some other things that are just kind of fun is Krita has a multi-brush. And it'll make it so everything is just automatically symmetrical. You can go over here and change how many things are in here. So under the multi-brush, what do I do? Snowflake. I can choose how many brushes I have. And it starts getting real slow.
Could you turn the light off, please?
Yeah.
Oh, can you turn the light off?
I can.
Oh, better. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for noticing.
Yeah. Look at this cool graphics there. What sort of brush to
Yeah, you could put the blind
subtract
at least
or-
this way.
I love the negative brushes. Yeah, if I set this to difference.
Maybe.
If it ever.
Wow.
Difference painting is another blend mode that I've been playing with a lot these days.
Different?
Yeah, it's kind of a hard thing to explain, but you know, I've been doing art for a long time, and these days, again, I'm as lazy as possible. And one of the things I love is if I paint with difference mode, I can simultaneously be painting with black and white at the same time. So just to show this with another mirrored symmetrical drawing, like I can start with this, and every time that it goes over this with white, it's going to do the opposite of white. So if it's white, it turns black, and if it's black, it turns white. It's kind of like, you know, the old KidPix brush, which was one of my favorite little programs back in the day. They had like a little reverse mode. And so like I can use this as something where I just like go back and forth. It's something that you can do, like a lot of comic books have this where, you know, like Transformers ink will be something where there's big black areas for shadow and areas that are not in shadow. But how do you get all that line art in where it's got all those cool details and crunchy things? I hate line art. And it'll basically just automatically like reverse when you have those ink over it. So if you have a really high quality ink.
They used to make kids markers that had a one reverse marker, where
Uh-huh.
you could draw, and then you would take this and draw light through your art, and it would, I don't know.
Flip it.
Yeah. It was just markers, and it was for kids. Maybe they took some inspiration from that.
I want to show you guys a couple more Krita recommendations that I have. One is doing master copies. I think I have some master copies around here somewhere. Documents.
At least you didn't forget your computer.
Yeah. That'll be fine. This is a Photoshop master copy. Screw that, I don't want to open Photoshop. Cancel. So master copies are something that I do sometimes where it's like you can duplicate. You can basically draw something on the left to look exactly like the thing on the right. So this is by Ivan Earl, who is something, and I recommend doing this as something where it's just a really good way to learn. So I do a lot of those.
So what were you doing there?
On the master copy,
Yeah.
let's see if I can get another one.
Sort of
Oh, here we are.
drawing on top.
So it's basically, this is a portrait by Frank Frazetta, and I create a document and I basically make it so that the left side of the document is what I'm mirroring, and then I just try and paint over here and make it as accurate as possible.
So you're
And-
trying to learn to do it.
Yeah, and like, you know, you can set goals like try not to have any color picking over here. Like I can go over here and hold control and color pick, but I want to try and go as far as possible without doing that. And
So the original is on the right, yeah.
yeah, this is Frank Frazetta's portrait. This is mine. This was on a day of class where everything went wrong. And, it turns out like they double booked my room for the quarter. And so like suddenly I was in this different lab and trying to like boot everything up, and it's two-factor authentication hell with Adobe. And so this painting was supposedly painted by Frank Frazetta after he met with like New York ad exec who said that, you know, these are great, but painting's done. Nobody likes paintings anymore. And so like walking home from that interview, he like ripped a fence post off of like his house because he was just so enraged. And then he like rage painted this. And I don't know, I was very much in that mood. So this was our daily exercise in class. But so, a lot of what I end up doing as I paint is I just, at some point, it's all color picking all the time, and a little bit of pepper crumb. And what I mean by that is, you know, just as a good exercise, see if you can paint from black to white just by blending and color picking. So like this is kind of a mid-tone gray now. Some chunk of this previous stroke plus my background equals the value that's in between these two values. And then vice versa here. And so just being able to look at this and figure out like a gradient from black to white is a surprisingly important skill, and all you're doing all the time when you paint is kind of eyeballing where that next little black and white difference is. And so then, if you can do that, when you come over here, a lot of times I'm just looking at one exact spot right here, and I ask myself, is my brush color lighter than that, darker than that, more saturated, less saturated? Is it the correct hue? And if you get those like 3 questions, you're pretty much good to go. So something like that. So if I match that color explicitly, I come over here, I just put it down. And so I don't have everything done, but I have like one thing that's a little bit closer. What about this orange? So my color needs to be darker, a little more saturated. And right around there.
So you're saying don't cheat by just by copying it.
Yeah. Although that's pretty close. I mean, I don't like being that zoomed in. But so now I just put a little dab, and it's a little closer. I don't have to have every problem solved right away. I'm going to cover this all up later anyways, right?
He does look less like an angry zombie. The one on the left.
Other things you can do with Krita that are really cool is you can bring in reference images, and they'll let's go find something on my desktop. I probably have some picture I can bring in. So if I go like this, and I bring this in, it'll ask me if I want to insert this as a layer or as a reference image. I'll choose reference image, and I can just have this off to the side now. And I'm left-handed. Explains a lot, doesn't it? So I like having this over here. And now, when I paint,
Same glasses.
ooh, this is cool with difference in blue. So, to do a master copy, even with something like this, I love just roulette brushing. Like, I pick a tool and I don't change my tool. until I'm like, I don't know, maybe it worked or not. And it's just very, it's my destructive nature, you know? It's messy. I don't have to have everything perfect right now. So I love doing stuff like that. Maybe I won't set it to difference anymore. And then you blend. So I keep using this term pepper crumb, and it's something where this is a painting term. Imagine you have a palette with actual paint on it, and you've kind of mixed something that's pretty close to everything, but it's not saturated enough. And so for something like right here, what I might do is just get a tiny pepper crumb of a little bit of cadmium red and mix it into whatever I have. And so it's basically using a little pinch of salt over and over and over to just modify your colors a little bit. So a lot of times, if I'm doing digital painting, I might do, just getting this in fast, LL.
I'm sure there's pictures on the web of like artist's palette when they're done for the day.
Oh yeah. I actually love painting where I find a screenshot of an artist I love on their palette, like Max Ginsburg palette. I'll just find a picture of it. Max Ginsburg is a cool guy. But where's his palette? I've seen pictures of it before. It's so beautiful. Alright, fine. How about this guy? David Cassidy. Look at that palette. I'll just copy this image, bring it in here as, oops, edit, paste as reference image. So now I've got this, and I'll just color pick off this to pick out my colors for painting.
Wow.
So do you still paint in real with
Yeah.
actual paints? Then?
I am teaching painting this quarter.
Cool.
It's been great. I missed it. I used to teach it, and then turned out like I was supposed to have a master's degree. So then I stopped teaching those. But I got a master's degree now. I'm teaching them again. Yay. That's right. I have pieces of paper that say things about me.
Shall we bow to you? Master.
Professor Baechler. All my students call me Oscar. My kids call me Oscar, which my wife hates, but I think it's funny. So when they're in trouble, they have to call me Dad. So anyways, like going back to that idea of a pepper crumb, sometimes I'll just grab like one little chunk of red and I'll put it in like super, super harsh. And then I just buff it out. And like there's just a little bit of red left over, you know?
Mm-hmm. I've never heard it called pepper crumb, so thank you for that.
Where did I learn that term? I've been, I don't know, maybe Virgil Elliott. You wrote a good book. Yeah, I mean, art is fun. Art is really hard though.
What's that about Virgil Elliott?
He just wrote a book called Traditional Oil Painting. That might be where I heard the term pepper crumb. It would be that, or maybe this guy Carter, Dale Carter, I think. One other thing that I love about painting with Krita is I'm going to go through some of these other tools. I've shown you the multi-brush tool, but the dynamic brush is really kind of fun, especially if you're painting with a mouse, because the dynamic brush, I'll up the mass here, lower the drag, basically starts making little swirls. So if you get it just right, you can kind of get something. Something that's like just a little bit more fun to draw with because it goes nuts. I do something called contour drawing sometimes. Sometimes it's referred to as like a blind contour. And it's this idea that you do a drawing entirely with one line and not even looking at your subject sometimes, which is fun. I actually do this in the movie theater because you can't see what you're drawing in the movie theater. And
Disconnects your brain from your judgment from
Yeah.
your work.
So like I'll sit in the dark of the movie theater and draw what's on screen. And then when the movie's over, I'm like, wow, this is garbage. But sometimes there's winners. So I love doing this where do the entire drawing in a single line. And this causes a lot of things to get fixed, especially for beginners. I think beginners, if I make fun of you guys for a minute, make fun of beginners. This is the way that beginners tend to draw. It's like, all right, I'm going to make a sphere. Artists
All
are
the
always
hairy
doing-
lines?
Yeah, Sasquatch lines. And then they wonder why their little sphere looks like it's covered in hair. The other thing beginners do is they're like, okay, I'm almost going to do it. Be very careful. I'm going to draw this little sphere.
Looks like the beginning of Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
Yeah. And then suddenly, like, this causes crunchy lines. And they just look yucky, right? And so I'm always trying to get my students to, like, loosen up, don't worry so much. And, you know, the other thing that students do is they're like, okay, I'm going to draw this. No, I don't like that. Okay, I'm going to draw the sphere. No, I have to start over. Okay, I'm going to do it. Oh, no, to do this. And so, like, you know, again, I keep bashing erasers. And blind contours, or doing a contour drawing is kind of lovely for this because, where am I going? I should lower my brush a little bit. It ends up making it so that, like, as you go, you just have to embrace those mistakes and just go over them. And it also helps you get, like, the composite of everything done real fast. So there you go. Eventually, some sort of face happens. And what I love about this is you can actually do a full drawing with this, and it's ugly as sin, and then you grab this, and you just buff it out, you know?
So what is the dynamic brush actually doing there?
Oh, the dynamic brush is actually making this have, like, it's almost like drawing with a yo-yo. So, like, if I make the distance way low and the stroke ending way high, oh, never mind, that's back to the normal brush. So it's kind of like flipping it around.
Mm.
If I go way low, it starts going kind of nuts. But so it's kind of fun as something where, you know, it can add in a little bit of, like, looseness on purpose. Here's another thing I have done as far as, like, modifying your Krita. What if you want to customize this? One thing you can do is go to Settings, Configure Krita, and you can modify your hotkeys and stuff. One of the things I love doing is I modify my hotkeys. This is another one of those things Photoshop can't do, in your face Photoshop. Search the color blue. And there's a hotkey to make the color more blue. So I've added Shift B as the hotkey for this, because I need B for brush. But I also have red. Make the color more red. I've set to the hotkey of R. If I want to change that, I'll just go like that. I think I have all the other ones. Make brush. So you can see I've modified my version of Krita to have all these, like, color controls where I can make the brush color a little lighter or darker. You know L and K, that's the default. I love that, and I want that in other places. So by using GR and other things. Oh, I think this is 9. Yeah, it looked like a G. So I have 9 and 0 to make my brush more saturated or less saturated. But I also have all these color controls for making it more yellow, more green, more red, or more blue. So now, like a lot of times when I'm painting, I'll just hit like L to make it a little lighter. Shift B to make it bluer. Y to make it more yellow. L for lighter. R for redder. And you can just use these as like a shortcut for your colors in a way that I think is really nice. And then I and O to make it more saturated or less saturated. And so this is how I do that like pepper crumbing painting, where if I just need like a little bit more red, I'll just put it in really fast. Let's see. I think there's some other specific Krita demo I wanted to show. Let's actually show some line art. Fine. Give me one second. Yeah, here we go. Actually, no, not that one. I'm just grabbing a sketch from my sketchbook. So these are some just random aliens that I've drawn. I'll use image, rotate image 90 degrees to the left. Let's say I wanted to like do some concept art based on this guy. How would I go about that? Well, first off, I might start by trying to clean up my line art so that it's a little more officially in place for what I want to do. So I'm going to hit Control-J to duplicate it. Control-L for levels. And I like to start by just making it sort of a more black and white image, like that. I can just paint this stuff out.
Now you didn't believe in our research.
Oh,
It's not an eraser.
Does this
He's
count as an
painting
eraser?
white over black.
it doesn't count.
Just like my
Totally
screen.
different. Sometimes you can do fancier cleanups. Like I might try use an overlay on this, which will leave that dark and this light. But this is probably fine for now. Now I'm going to use a filter, which is Gmic QT. So filter Gmic QT. This is a bunch of stuff that I think other people have made in like GIMP. And what I'm going to do here is, I might need a better line art. I think I overprocessed it. Well, I think I do have to use that other one. Oh no, my computer froze.
Windows.
Windows. Yeah, Krita crash. Windows. Yeah, I don't need any of this. I think this guy's just a better scan. Let me rotate. So again, levels to try and make it color versus not color. Or rather like line art versus not line art. Somewhere right around there. And now, let me try this again. Gmic QT, colorize line art, autofill. Usually, what this does is, I might have to modify certain parts of it. Yeah, it's, for the most part, working. That's bad. So what this does is it kind of looks at the line art and figures out where zones are. And as a result, when I hit OK, this is going to give me the basis for a flat pretty much automatically. Will it work? Kind of. In certain areas. So a lot of times, like the first thing you do after doing your line art or bringing line art in is you need to like make something that represents like the overall silhouette of a character. And so normally, I feel like this didn't work very well. Let me try this one more time. Let me try it with this. Filter, start GMAQT. Maybe like way smaller regions. This one also sometimes works. Nope. So I'll end up using this as like selections, and that ends up being something where if I wanted to do this as concept art, this can serve as a baseline to do things like, that's like the overall silhouette. Then I'll oftentimes do a value pass that's clipped to that. If this ever works, I don't know. I might have changed these too much. Oop, did I crash Krita again? No. Well, fine. I'll just do it the manual way. I'll set this to multiply. I'll create a layer underneath this. And a lot of times what you end up doing is you just need something that represents like the overall silhouette. So I'll do this with the fill brush using like a crazy color. And the E hotkey switches it to erase. I didn't want you guys to know that, but now you do. And so you can use this to like get a baseline of your overall character silhouette. Oh, no wonder this one wasn't working. This is a blurry one. I think there's a better version of this. There's other selection tools too. Did it break? Oh. No. Come on, Krita. You can do it. I think I got some like Krita demos on my YouTube channel. There's Undiluted 1. Yeah, is this in Photoshop? Do a little bit of both. So I love doing this, just screen recording myself and go nuts. I think this was like my first time using those hotkeys that I put in of like make the color more blue or green whenever I want. Here's an example of the perspective tools that I keep mentioning. You can just put down perspective stuff really fast with it. And again, I mentioned that I have a hotkey that actually enables or disables this. So a lot of times I'll put this in place And then I just turn it off and I do stuff that doesn't use this for a little bit. The other thing that you can do is the hotkey V in Krita will temporarily switch your brush to the line tool. And so a lot of times if I need something like a diagonal or something where it's not explicitly getting snapped to those assistant previews, I'll just like temporarily hold V and switch to this. Hey, it kind of worked. Here's a tip for line art. Select the background, not the foreground. This is already like too labor intensive. Stupid line art. Just paint over it. That's good. All right, no flat stem over there. It's too mad at me. What else is there in Krita? I think I should show you some of my favorite brushes before we leave. We've got some in there. So other brushes that I like, these ones I tend to go back to a lot, the ones that I showed earlier. But some of the other ones that are really good, it's always good to have like something that's like a bitmap stamper. So this one here is drawing this in the direction that I'm going. And a lot of times this is something where I just always need this kind of sort of tool. And if I go to F5, I can actually switch this to other kinds of brushes. So sometimes people use this for like chain links. This like animal pattern one is kind of nice. And I just strongly recommend go and have fun. Like try a brush out just to see if you like it or don't. And then you go from there. These are like random shape brushes. And I kind of love these for more abstract concept art stuff. This seems like wrong to paint with this in some ways, but it's so fun. And, you can always just go back and fix it later. And like, this is how I spend so much of my time painting is a one-button interface, which is I'm just hitting X to switch back and forth between black and white. You don't need all those other buttons. I can paint faces like until the day I die. I love painting faces.
It's the first thing that us humans learn how to figure out.
See, something like that, I'm going to just go in, lower my opacity, and just buff it out. Sometimes when I buff it out, I want to have like black as my color, or white as my color, because that's how it ends up blending over it. And now it's a face. To show that marker process that I had mentioned. I love using markers where I will set this to something like this. So this is like a blending marker. It works really well. And I'll set my blending marker here and just buff it out. If I want to go left or right, that's where it ends up. I'm going to select this marker, which I think one of these has. Oh, these are like the marker engine. I'm going to just select this paint roller, and show my marker process, which is actually to set my brush to multiply. And again, multiply is going to make everything darker whenever I draw stuff. So if I have black, that's bad. But I'm going to go to my swatches. I think there's a swatch setup here. Settings, Dockers, swatch. Palette. There we go. It's bigger. There we go. So I'm going to mostly paint with these like really light colors. You know, I'm mostly trying to stay in like pastels. And I'm also going to try and use a little bit of aberrant color, which I mean like it's going the wrong direction. And so a lot of times it's like I'll select this pink. Maybe it's the wrong pink. And every time I put this down, it's darkening the colors below it. So I want to start like really carefully and slow. Just a little bit of a dab here and there. And so if I do this on like a pure white picture, you know, this pastel method is like, I gotta fill this with. I'm painting with these pastels and they're set to multiply. I'll even lower my brush opacity, so it's even more like that. And at some point, this idea of like, what am I looking at starts arising from these like subtractive brush strokes. So as this color statement starts to show up, I'm going to make a dangerous choice, which is I'm going to start color picking off of these. So any brush stroke on here is a combination of like the previous brush strokes that have gotten a little bit darker, which means that when I color pick off of them, it's like I'm brushing with an even darker marker now. And so it slowly gets darker and darker as I go. And when it's ready for the next pass, more of this. I keep selecting. And like, so now when I start doing things like a nostril here, it's like very, very dark. It can get to that like pure black because I'm using a darker color and it is subtracting still. But if you look at my swatch up here, it's still pretty like medium value. It's just that multiply is building up on itself. I think I'm at time, but I wanted to just recommend, you know, there's a couple other things Krita's awesome for. If you do any 3D stuff, you can use it for texturing. If you do any 2D stuff, it's great for sprites. You can do, you know, let's make like a 32 by 32. Create. And if you go to the presets, there's one for animation. And Krita's pretty great for animating. You know what's terrible for animating? Photoshop.
I never would have
It's like
guessed.
back in the day, they had Firefox, or fireworks,
Uh-huh.
but they got rid of it.
So it's like I have to like, I just forget how I do this. It's like first I do that, and then I have to say create blank keyframe. So you can't do this in Photoshop. It's like, where do I turn on auto keying? If there's a way to have auto key on. auto key blank. Alright. So now every time I do this, it'll make keyframes for me. So you can use this for making sprites, and I've done that in class a lot. But yeah, that's Krita. I hope you learned something. Sorry I didn't have a tablet today, but I had fun anyways. Still not bad. Not bad for a mouse painting.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So there was the topic of conversation for a while last night at our table was one person was going to work on icons.
Mm-hmm.
What would you suggest to that person?
I would actually say, so icons to me sounds like vectors. And I have a new favorite toy, which is graphite. Are the lightning talks today?
Yesterday.
Oh, damn it. I was thinking of doing a graphite lightning talk. Graphite is a new,
Next year.
it's like open source. It's made by my buddy Kevon Chambers. And it's so cool because they're copying Blender hotkeys. So if I have this like cube selected, I can hit G for grab, S for scale, and R for rotate.
Mhm. Uh-huh.
It's called graphite.
Yeah.
Well, they weren't talking tools, so that person, I don't even remember his name.
The other thing is they have
They know
nodes.
about it, but somebody else was like, but why not fonts? We need fonts. Word fonts are so bad, and oh man, fonts seem like a nightmare because of intellectual property.
Mhm. We should make open source fonts. Yeah, like I love this program, and I haven't done much with it yet, but this is the coolest thing is it has node-based interfaces, so you can do geometry nodesy stuff with it. It's still really new though, so I got to start making tutorials for it or something.
So next year,
I guess so.
lightning.
Next year, graphite talk. Any other questions about Krita?